I put together the template for you so that you basically had the table label itself and the column labels, and all you had to do is put in the data. I even had the computer set up so it would automatically do the math for you. Some of you went ahead and stuck in your measurements, but the computer spreadsheet would have done it for you if you just put in these numbers. You didn't have to put in your own density. Turns out some of your density calculations were wrong, which isn't good. But anyway, so here's what I want you to know about the table label. Table labels come in two parts. Table labels come in two parts. Table labels come in two parts. There's a table number. All right, that makes up the table number there, table 1 period. And there's a table description. Correct. Okay. So table number includes the word table. The word table is capitalized. And then you've got a table number followed by a period. Tables are numbered in the order that they appear. And since we only have one table, that's table 1. If we had two tables, we'd have table 1 and table 2. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So a table number has to have the word table and the number and a period. And then the description can be 1, 2, 3 sentences, okay? You're not really limited to the number of sentences, but we're not writing an essay here, okay? What has to be in the table label, the table description. This is the table number, this is the description, and together they make up the table label. This table description has to tell me what's in the table and why it's important. What's in the table and why it's important. So what's in this table is the data we collected in lab to determine if there's a relationship between temperature and density for water, and why it's important is we're trying to find a relationship between temperature and density. Okay, we're trying to organize our data to see if there's any relationship between temperature and density. Okay, so tables are a method for organizing data. Tables are a way to organize data. That's its purpose, to organize data. So the table description tells me what's in the table, why it's important. All right? And all together, this up at the top here, all this together makes up the table label. Okay? All that together, the table number and description make up the table label. Now I want to talk about column labels. Column labels. Okay? If a column does not contain measurements, then the column label just needs to tell me what's there. If a column does not contain measurements, the column label should just tell you what's there. So this is just telling me what lab or group number collected the data, and that's not a measurement. That's just a counted number. Okay? It's an identifier. There's no units of measurement that go along with it. Got it? It's not a measurement. It's not a calculated number. However, if column labels if columns contain measurements or calculated numbers. Columns contain measurements or calculated numbers. So all four of those columns contain measurements or calculated numbers. This is a column of measurements, this is a column of measurements, this is a column of measurements, and this is a calculated set of calculated data. Okay? When you have a column that contains measurements or calculated numbers, then the column label has to tell me what's there and must give me the unit of measurement. Must give me the unit of measurement. Got that? When a column contains measurements or calculated numbers, the column label must tell the reader what's there and what the units of measurements are. Okay? So the only difference between these column labels that are not measurements of calculated numbers and those that are, the only difference is that if you have calculated numbers or measurements, you must include the units of measurement in the column label. That's the difference between the two. Got all that? Please notice the table label sits on top of the table. It's not part of the table. So there's no outline around this. Table label is on top, not part of the table. So there's no outline around the table label. All other parts of the table have to be completely outlined. And just so we have a common set of terms, wherever I put these measurements or observations, those are called data cells. Data cells. That's just making sure you have the terminology to understand what I'm talking about. When I refer to a data cell, that's what I'm talking about. Data cells. Well, you're not experienced enough in data collection to understand. I said yesterday that these 6 points probably don't give us enough information to actually produce a curve. If I were looking at this, I might conclude there is a curve here, okay? But really, I need more data to make that determination. You don't know that yet, and that's fine. Okay, if you put a curve on there, I wouldn't hold that against you. But based on what I know, I would say that there's probably a straight line that probably goes something like that. Okay, that's a best fit line. Okay? Now, I hope nobody did one going downhill. All right? If you had a curve or you had a straight line in that direction, then you probably did a pretty good job. All right? That's a best fit line of curve. All right? That's good enough for today. All right. What we need down here in the bottom, though, that wasn't on there was a figure label. Okay? And this is the first graph, so this is figure number 1. And then we need 3 things in the figure label. All right? We need tell me what's in there, what's in the graph, why it's important, and what does the analysis tell me? What does that pattern we see here tell me about the behavior of temperature versus density? Okay? So first thing is, this figure is a comparison of the temperature of tap water and the resulting density. Okay? So this graph, I could say this graph compares the temperature of tap water against the resulting density. So that sentence right there tells me what's there, and it also tells me why it's important. It's a comparison. Okay, so I kind of put all those in one sentence. Does that make sense? If you did 2 sentences, fine. All right? But I also need analysis here. I need to say, what is the pattern? I got a positive slope on this line, so I can see that as I increase temperature, what happens to the density? It's also increasing, isn't it? Okay? That's the analysis. What does the pattern tell you? This pattern shows that as you increase the temperature, the density increases. Does that make sense? Okay, so that would be a clear analysis for this. So that also should go in the figure label. I'm not writing it down there, but that should also go there. Got it? All right. Titles. All graphs have titles. All graphs have titles. The title form, and this is a simplified title form, okay? It's not the final answer to every kind of title, but it's a simplified guide for a good title, okay? And I've written in the proper form. So usually you start out with the effect of. And then in the title, you're going to tell me what the independent variable is. Okay? the effect of whatever the independent variable is, and then you're going to write on the, and then you're going to tell me about the dependent variable. So if you write a title in that form, most of the time you're going to have a pretty good title for a science graph of this type. Alright? If you're using Excel, they call that a scatter graph. You might call it a point graph or a dot graph or something. It's fine. Okay? Scatter graph is what I use because it's so ubiquitous in Microsoft products. Alright, so notice I've done that with the title. The effect of, and so this word temperature is what I have on the x-axis, and the x-axis is where you always put the independent variable. Okay? The effect of temperature on the density of tap water. Density of tap water is the dependent variable. I always put the dependent variable on the y-axis. The independent variable, remember, it's what you change. So yesterday you changed the temperature, or each lab group used a different temperature. The class as a whole changed the temperature, didn't they? Alright? Table 1 was close to 0, table 2 was 10 degrees, and so forth. We changed the temperature, and we measured how it changed the density. So density is the independent variable, the dependent variable. The density changed because of what we changed. We changed the temperature, that's the independent variable. It caused the density to change, that's the dependent variable. Does that make sense? Axes labels. Axes labels are very much like column labels. Okay? Pretty much the same stuff. Temperature of water, and I have the units of measurement, density, and units of measurement. Okay? So column labels that should go over the columns of data you're going to graph, those are almost exactly what you're going to have for axes labels. Does that make sense? And let's look at the spacing of the number line. Okay? Each of these axes has a number line. The distance between each of these points on here are the same. So this is 15 degrees C from here to here. Here, 15 degrees C from here to here. 15 degrees C from here to here. So they're evenly spaced. Number lines on a graph must be evenly spaced. Number lines on a graph must be evenly spaced. And the number line does not have to start at 0. Number lines don't have to start at 0. Notice this number line starts at 0.850. What you want to do is arrange your graph. I know you did it differently in math. This is science now. You want to arrange your graph number lines so that your data is spread out over the graph as widely as you can get it. Okay? Because if you bunch all your data up in one tiny little corner, you can't see the pattern. Does that make sense? If I go out at night and look up in the sky, what do I see up there? Stars. Some of those stars are galaxies. We just think they're stars because all we can see is a point of light, because everything's kind of bunched up in one tiny little place from our point of view. Does that make sense? So we can't even see the galaxy, but it's there. Now, if we get a telescope and zoom in, we can tell it's a galaxy. That's what I want you to do with your data. Zoom in so your data spread out and you can see the pattern. You with me? Everybody understand why? All right, so that's kind of a quick overview of tables and graphs. Any questions? The only kind of graph that's allowed in this class is a scatter graph. Every scatter graph should have a best fit line of curve. Got that? I don't care whether they have pretty colors or not. I care about the data. That make sense? All right? Clarity of what you're trying to show or what you're trying to figure out. That's what's important. Let me tell you something real important about tables. We said tables are a tool for organizing data. Graphs are a tool for analyzing data. Tables are a tool for organizing data. Graphs are a tool for analyzing data. I can tell there's a pattern when I put it on a graph. I can't necessarily tell there's a pattern just by looking at the numbers.